How many of you remember buying your first car? What's the thing that you remember the most? Was it the freedom? Was it the ability to go wherever you wanted? Was it just being able to be an independent person? All of those things are awesome. And I put this question to you: why should college be any different? Yet there are some colleges that are like our overprotective parents who don't quite trust their students to be able to make their own choices. Brigham Young University, Idaho is one such school. The policy at BYU-I is that all students must live in Brigham Young University, Idaho approved housing while attending school, which means that single students specifically, can only live in designated housing that the school has specifically said are set aside for their students. Students cannot live anywhere else. My purpose in presenting this speech today is to help you see how allowing BYU-I students to live on their own wherever they would choose would not just be beneficial to the students, but it would be beneficial to the community as well. I have spent a significant amount of time going through research in preparation for this topic, and I am ready to show you how BYU-I making this policy change to let students live wherever they choose would be in the best interest of the BYU-I students and of the Rexburg community. There are two main problems that are created when BYU-I forces their students to live in approved housing. This first problem is for the students. Students at BYU-I are forced to live in designated apartment complexes approved by the school, as I've already said. The owners can then raise the rent prices, and the students are forced to pay it, and they don't have any other options about where else to move. They have to pay it if they want to stay in school. The students also can't call the space their own. They can't have their own furniture or rearrange the rooms any way they want. They also don't have control over their roommates, and they have to submit to weekly cleaning checks, which are pretty invasive. If someone was coming into your room and checking it every single week, that would be pretty invasive for you, right? Why should college students be any different? The second problem is created for when BYU-I has this policy is for the local community. When local families want to move to Rexburg, there are no available apartment complexes because the apartments that are available are already being rented, and the BYU-I approved housing will not rent to anyone other than students because of their contracts with BYU-I. And the renters won't do it. They won't sell a contract to anyone who's not a student. So BYU-I approved housing is taking away housing from people in Rexburg. With these problems in mind, the best thing that the university can do to mitigate or combat these problems is to do away completely with BYU-I approved housing for their students. Allowing this change would let students have a space to call their own while living away from home, and students would no longer have to pay the rent prices. They could pay something that was within their budget, not something that supposedly is in their budget range. In an article written by Dallin Vick that was published by the BYU-I Scroll, Dallin Vick wrote, quote, "If BYU-I released students from housing restrictions, students could see better prices as competition between apartment owners. Currently, competition is open only to the select complexes that BYU-I approves." End quote. Further evidence for why BYU-I should allow this change comes from an article written by Davesville entitled, "What are the advantages of living off campus?" The article says, quote, "Living off campus is cheaper than living in on-campus dorms. Many college students are on a budget and need to be selective as to where they spend their money. If funds are tight, there are a number of options to live off campus in apartments that fit their budget." End quote. In addition to that, the school would no longer have to be limited by the number of spots that are available for approved housing. That would go away completely for the school, and they could let more students in because there would be more space available for these students to rent from. Each student would be responsible for finding their own housing, which means the school would not have to do it. In that same article written by Davesville, it says, quote, "Living on your own instills a sense of responsibility and maturity. Keeping up on your studies, maintaining a job, paying bills on time, and upkeep on your household are excellent skills to have in adulthood and will be of tremendous value as you transition from school to a new career. And finally, more people in the community, end quote, end quote. And finally, more people in the community would be able to find a place to live without being in competition with the students. How frustrating is that for other people trying to move to Rexburg who are in competition with these students? Now, the counter argument for why students should be forced to live in approved housing is pretty straightforward. In an article published by the Deseret News announcing a policy change for Brigham Young University in Provo, BYU Student Life Vice President Julie Franklin said, quote, "Research repeatedly shows that students who live on campus with their fellow students have a better and more successful college experience," end quote. In addition to that, some might argue that the best things about approved housing are that students don't have to provide their own furniture, and it's supposedly within the price range of a typical college student. However, as we just read from the Davisville article, having one's own apartment and being able to choose that provides a sense of responsibility and provides a form of education that would otherwise be unavailable to the students who, because they were forced to live in BYU-I approved housing. Now that we know what the solution is, let's see what that looks like. If we don't make the necessary changes for BYU-I approved housing, fewer students will be able to attend the school because the available spacing will be limited. Rent prices will continue to rise and students will be forced to pay it. The community of Rexburg will continue to face housing shortages because the housing available will be taken up by the students. If we do make the changes, the owners of the rentals will be able to make more money because it won't just be students that they're renting to. So what can you do to help the BYU-I community, both the students and the locals? The thing that you can do to help BYU-I students is to write an email to the BYU-I Student Life Vice President, Amy LeBeau, and encourage her to take steps to do away with BYU-I approved housing. I also encourage you to invite 5 of your friends to write an email to her as well, and invite them to invite 5 more. Thank you.